Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. I'm here joined by Kyle and Jordan, and we have all of the news about the Cadillac IQL, the longer version of the regular Cadillac Escalade IQ. Let's just jump right into it. Now, before I bring Jordan and Kyle back on, I wanted to go over some specs we didn't go over in our video, starting off with the weight. The Cadillac Escalade IQL is expected to weigh 9,420 pounds, which isn't that surprising. We have the Hummer EV, we have the Silverado EV, we have the Sierra Denali EV. At this point, it's what we expect. These heavy 200 kilowatt hour battery packs from General Motors. You're going to get a pretty heavy car. And in velocity max mode, the IQL is expected to have a 0 to 60 of 4.7 seconds for a 9,000 pound SUV. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, this vehicle will come in 4 trims. So we have luxury, we have sport, we have premium luxury, and premium sport. Now, the difference between the sport and the luxury models is going to be some of your accents. So, for instance, in the sport models, it has blacked out trim versus the luxury models have chrome trim, especially on the wheels as well. These wheels are blacked out versus these are chrome. But the difference between premium and non-premium, the premium is going to get faster AC charging. You're going to get 19.2 kilowatt AC charging versus 11.5 in the non-premium versions. You're going to get power open and closed doors, which I imagine soft closing and opening doors. You're going to get the 38 speaker system, massaging seats, 16-way power front row seating, just even more arrogant and excessive than the standard Cadillac Escalade IQ and IQL. You get the premium version, you're getting a lot more stuff. You're getting a lot more craziness. And so that's what this offers here. Those 4 different options. And of course, as with a luxury vehicle like this, you're going to get a pretty good amount of options in terms of paint and colors here. So they have quite the amount, nothing too I would say crazy, right? Some nice neutral tones, a cream, a white, a really dark blue, black, gray, brown. Interior, just 2 options. Wheels, same thing, just 2 options. With the luxury, you're going to get the 22-inch 10-spoke alloy wheels, and then you're also going to have the option for the 24-inch 7-spoke alloy wheels. And then if you get the sport version, these are just going to be blacked out. Also worth mentioning, on the premium vehicles, you get one other interior that you don't get in the regular IQ models. And so premium, you get Camila, which is I imagine like a brown interior. You interpret this as the color that you like. And then you also have this harbor blue interior versus the regular IQL. You'll have the sheer medium dark cinder gray, which looks really nice. And then you have this back in black Santorini color. Really nice color here. So it's a Cadillac. It's excessive. It's crazy. These screens here, right? Of course, you have the Super Cruise. So the steering wheel has its own kind of LEDs in it. All of this ambient lighting. I mean, this, I guess you imagine just one large screen or 2 different displays here, and then another one down here. It's just excessive. In terms of first impressions, right? This is still a Cadillac Escalade IQ in terms of fascia and design. So I guess what are your thoughts on, I guess, that design, Kyle and Jordan?
Well, I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time with the regular Escalade IQ. Drove it around, made a whole full tour, deep dive video for out of spec reviews, and largely really fell in love with it because it's just so excessive. It's massive. It weighs over 9,300 pounds, and that's not GVWR. That's weight of the vehicle. Its GVWR is 10.5. So you really actually can't put that much stuff in there, and the tow rating is suffered by that. So really, the last thing anyone thought this thing needed was to be bigger. But that's what we're getting. We're getting a bigger version of the already massive Escalade. Now, my impression is I'm actually glad there's a long version of this vehicle. And I don't want to say long wheelbase because we're going to run through the specs in a minute, but the wheelbase is the same from the regular Escalade and the IQL. It just looks to have a more squared off back, which is what I prefer. And it seems to also maybe have a longer body behind the rear wheel. Isaiah can tell us in a bit. I haven't researched this, and that's why I'm just joining. But the Escalade was really a masterclass in inefficient packaging. And I mean that in the sense where when I parked it next to the Lucid Gravity for that video, I took it actually to Lucid headquarters because, both the Escalade IQ and the Gravity are brand new, exciting luxury three-row SUVs launching at the same time in a similar price category, depending on spec. And the Gravity had comparable in some places and more room in others while being a significantly smaller vehicle. And really the only way to get close with, having usable three-row, if you're going to put 6 or 7 people in a vehicle and their luggage, you kind of need the IQL. So Isaiah and Jordan, I mean, Jordan, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you think this is dumb? I mean, I think it's a good thing.
It's absolutely unnecessary, and that's kind of why I like it. I think that appeals to the, I guess, Escalade owner because I feel like they've never been that efficient with, well, efficiency, but also storage and anything like that. It's just, it is a huge land yacht here in the US, and I think that's what their target market wants. And this just adds to the fun. And isn't this more horsepower than the Escalade V, which is the 6.2 liter V8? With less cost because the Escalade V I think is 160 grand. So this is maybe a bargain in some ways. But I really like how this changes the design just a little bit. Like you said, Kyle, the rear end especially just looks very stately, whereas the normal Escalade IQ, it was like missing something. So I think this works. I think there is a niche. Not that many people need this much space, but for the people who want it, that's why the Escalade exists. That's why the Suburban exists. I mean, it's that like massive people slash stuff mover, and I mean, if anything, I'm like, wow, the trunk is that small, or the E trunk as they call it. It's only like 12 cubic feet. Could have been bigger.
Well, that's the front trunk, the E trunk, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I guess this is really important in the sense where, okay, much of our audience isn't going to be buying $150,000 Escalade IQL, but I bet a lot of our audience is interested in the new Tahoe and Suburban equivalents of whatever this will be if GM does it. I don't know if that's been announced or released. I've heard rumors, but just following what GM does, they always just with the big full size SUVs, they take one platform, they do Tahoe, Yukon, and Escalade with the long equivalents, and here the long equivalent is the same wheelbase, which is very odd. And so Isaiah, I guess before we start, do we know the cost on this thing?
Yeah, so it starts at, I could bring up this exact figure here, but it's $136,000.
That's the base
Um,
price. Is how much
right.
more is that than the standard wheelbase?
So the regular IQ starts here. Put this building by.
136 sounds like that's top spec Gravity is
Right.
where this starts at the moment. Gravity will have probably a Dream Edition, but their Grand Touring maxed out as 130 something.
Yeah, the IQ not long is 129,990. So,
So it's like 5, 6, 7 grand difference, right?
right.
Okay. And then what are the downsides? Do you lose range? What's this rated at?
So 460 miles of EPA range is the quoted rating versus the regular Escalade IQ estimated range also of 460 miles. So it doesn't seem like you're losing much here.
Well, yeah, anything on paper, it's the same.
Right.
But how's that possible, Jordan? Because the Escalade, okay, longer I get, but then the sloping roof of the standard car. Isaiah, can you pull up a picture of the back of this thing, and then we can
Yeah.
pull up a picture of the standard one. The standard one has this ugly sloping back. This looks proper. This looks really good. But the argument of sloping SUVs have always been aerodynamic drag. How is it possible this gets the same range as the standard car? Jordan, do you have any ideas?
I feel like there's no way. But do I don't know. Um, yeah, you're right, because there's a spoiler that could hurt the. I don't know. There's a lot of. I want to test these side by side because I feel like there's no way, and I don't know if there's a way to game the system in a way where it's like testing in slightly variant cycles or the wheels change. But you're right. Now that I see the Escalade IQL next to the Escalade IQ, I hate the IQ.
Yeah, the standard one, like, don't buy that. It's
Right.
so bad. It's like if you're not giving up wheelbase, so your drivability is going to be identical between the two. Parking in the garage, okay, maybe that's going to be an issue. These things are massive vehicles and they have this big presence, but the overall length of the vehicle, how much longer is it, Isaiah?
4 inches.
That's nothing.
Right.
So it's Escalade IQL, which L is for long, but it's like barely longer.
So it's more to do with the back. Forgive the dog barking in the background. Also, Jordan, I'm sure the viewers will comment. You're really quiet, and Isaiah, you're really loud. So we're gonna try and fix that in post. But just if anyone comments, Jordan, just hold the mic as close as you can to your mouth. Um, I what I don't understand is the range being the same and how 4 inches is enough product differentiation to basically have both of these on sale at the same time. My impression is they should have just had the IQL and
Right.
skipped the standard one.
Yeah, that would make the most sense. Yeah, I mean, I imagine most Cadillac buyers who'll be buying this, right, coming from the standard internal combustion engine Escalade. This, right, is a little bit smaller than the internal combustion engine, the regular IQ. So the IQL just is an easy transition for most. And so it just makes the IQ on paper, right, range, um, just price, just not that competitive.
So what other specs are there? Do we know anything else about the new IQL?
Yeah, so 205 kilowatt hour battery, of course, NCM,
Yeah.
680 horsepower, and that's in normal mode. So this does have more horsepower than the Cadillac Escalade V in velocity mode. So the Cadillac Escalade internal combustion engine gets 682 horsepower. This gets 750 horsepower in velocity max mode.
But it
Uh,
weighs like the size of a
right,
small planet. So,
right.
the horsepower, it's all power to weight. And honestly, that's not even that much horsepower. If you look at Tesla, they're doing 1,000 horsepower in a Model X for under 100 grand.
Well, I don't know why they didn't, I'm here in Vegas and now I can talk about the fact that there's a Silverado EV ZR2 that Chevy's competing with, which has a tri-motor system with 1100 horsepower. This would have been perfect to have that.
Right. So that's not a production system. I don't think you can buy the ZR2 with
No,
that, but that's similar to the Hummer EV's 1,000 horsepower tri-motor,
right.
which the Escalade really needs. Because I drove the standard Escalade and I'm like, if you're spending this much money for American excess, big sound system, big seats, big vehicle, like there is some appeal to that. I love it. I love the big, comfy Land Cruiser yacht thing with zero performance cred to it whatsoever. The braking distance is insane on this thing. But like then just give it the give it 1,000 horsepower. Like you're already almost there. You have the tri motor setup, which is probably what they put in that ZR2, Jordan. And like why doesn't this have that? That seems like such a lame thing. Also, back to the battery pack. GM always underquotes usable capacity.
Okay.
So they say 205 kilowatt hours. It's the same double stack 24 module pack that we've tested a trillion times on our channels. It's actually 217 kilowatt hour usable is what we've been able to pull out of it. And it'll charge at almost 400 kilowatts, have a fat charging curve, but they do suffer from weird thermal things while charging. The software updates have gotten better. Jordan, you just went on a road trip with a GM, not a 24 module, but a 20 module pack. Did you notice those weird fluctuations sometimes just happening? And sometimes you just can't explain why you're getting reduced charging performance.
Yeah, one specific charging stop did seem to have nothing explainable other than heat or something, because it was just we had all conditions were optimal. The truck did all of its preconditioning that it needed. It just seemed like it derated faster than it should have. And but there's no way the truck doesn't say, oh, it's because of the charger of the truck. There's just no communication whatsoever. So you're just guessing at that point, which yeah, to your point, it's not ideal. But also, I don't know how many people are going to be road tripping this, although it'd be such a good road tripper. Like putting miles on this thing through Kansas, like that's the best way to get through Kansas, especially if you have four people with the now two-row executive package. So we could talk about that, which is
Oh,
I think
what's up with that?
a difference, because this has the second row executive package option, which adds more like headroom, leg room. I mean, basically, it's like giving the second row seats the same love as the front row seats, including even headrest speakers, which I don't have any other car done headrest speakers at the second row.
Well, so the IQ that I tested had that, but I also had a third row.
Okay, well, this has, I guess, the same thing, but supposedly even more space. Like that 4 extra inches of car basically gives you just a little bit more of all these little spaces. So it's funny because I don't think it really gives you that much more storage capacity. It's just stretching out what the occupants are taking.
But that's weird though, because the wheelbase isn't changing.
Yeah, so I don't. It's almost like the wheelbase doesn't matter what's above it because there's so much car above it. Looking at
it,
this,
it could
looking at the
be.
specs of like this versus Gravity is just hilarious with how this is like a foot taller, a foot longer, a foot wider. I forget exactly what the
Yeah, like
numbers were, but
3,000 pounds more stuffed in there. So wait, when you're saying the two-row executive, are you just meaning the second row, or do you
yeah,
mean that there's no third row?
no. The executive second row, it
I see.
keeps the third row as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
But it also has, so yeah, I want to hear this 38 speaker, well actually 42 speaker if you have the executive second row with headrest speakers in the second row. That is so many speakers. It makes the Gravities like what, 22 speakers seem not crazy big. But I think that's what's slightly changing on the inside of this is just a little tiny bit more room.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I thought the sound system was amazing, by the way. I don't
Yeah.
actually like it got loud, it had bass, was awesome, loved it. It took a second for it to break in my car, but once I got it broken in, it just really opened up and was amazing. So I'm a huge Escalade fan. I've always been an Escalade fan, actually. I love the Escalade V we've had on test. I've grew up with Suburbans and Escalades, always having them in the all the way back to the GMT 800 and previous generations as well. So I'm a big full size GM guy. Like I love these things, and they are a part of what brings me car enthusiasm. I love this type of vehicle. I really don't know. I'm just struggling with the product differentiation between the Escalade IQ and the IQL. Can we pull back up the photo of the IQL so we're not looking at the old one anymore? And so the new one, it is it a different wheel design that you can get on them now? No.
It looks the
It
same. It
it's
is
got a like
wild.
Yeah.
a Vistic in the back, Jordan. So can you explain the Cadillac SUV lineup, Jordan?
Yeah, so Vistic is this what they call the global Escalade, so it's smaller than this. I would like to see them side by side, especially the IQL, because I think that'd be funny. But this feels like bigger Vistic. And then below the Vistic, so the Vistic is the smaller three row. This is the bigger three row, actually biggest three row, because now there's three rows apparently, because that's what we need in America. And then below that is the Lyric, and then the let's see, Optic. Yeah, that I think that's all the SUVs. Everything IQ. But the Escalade IQL, I also looked up. It looks like it has 1 cubic feet additional storage capacity with the third row up. 1 cubic foot
What?
difference. So that's showcasing how much they are expanding the interior passenger volume to just give everyone more space.
Okay,
So
well, that's kind of annoying because, first of all, it's important to note that that's probably based on SAE metrics, which
yeah,
sometimes doesn't represent the full cargo volume of the vehicle. If you guys remember when the Bolt EUV launched, the bigger Chevy Bolt, it actually had less cargo space on paper than the regular Bolt, but that was just because it was a weird SAE metric on where they had to measure the height, and it actually did have a bigger cargo volume. So I guess we'll have to reserve that because I have a hard time believing
and
this is only 1 cubic foot more.
And we'll have to see how the packaging looks because with the third row down, it's 6 more cubic feet than the IQ. So that also talks about how the third row is positioned and how I guess the third row occupants will benefit from the IQL. So I think this is a true 6 seat adult human SUV Whereas the third row in the normal IQ, I don't know, Kyle, can you speak to how
Yeah.
cramped that was?
Well, we had the one with the executive seats, which first of all was
Okay.
almost impossible to get into the third row. So I would highly recommend, if you're ever going to use the third row, do not spec the executive seat option. Just not worth it at all. Unless you're going to use it for like a limo service or a hotel shuttle thing, just get the standard buckets. That's totally fine. And then, yeah, it might be interesting. It's hard to say. I really wish the one we tested had the standard buckets, since I think that's going to be the more popular option, especially among family buyers. They're not going to go for the executive ones because it genuinely is not possible for me to get into the third row without like damaging my body or the car. So
So this
recommend
could
the
be
standard one.
this could be different then. Like this could have executive second row with usable third row, if I'm reading into this correctly.
It's possible, totally possible. But it was more like the ingress of getting into the third row, that like just waiting for that second row seat to slowly power move up,
And
which
it's just not the gravity way of thinking, which was like, oh, let's sculpt out the inside to maximize interior space.
right, the lucid gravity is a masterclass in spatial engineering in terms of using getting the most amount of interior space for the vehicle footprint, and in really smart and clever ways. This is kind of the opposite, but again, there is some appeal to the American excess here. So I think the smart person's going to buy the gravity all day every day. Smart person's going to buy an EV9 used or something. But if you're a music producer, if you're a high-end hotel shuttle service, if you're, living in some of the parts of the country where you do need like the newest Escalade to kind of stand out. There's parts of Long Island that come to mind. That's kind of where I'm from. So that, I see, and always the thing was to have the brand new Escalade, and put dubs on it back in the day. I think this works. Like, I think it works really well, and I much prefer this over the standard Escalade. Just from a styling perspective, having that squared off rear hatch is perfect for the dogs. It was almost impossible for us to put dogs in the other one. This one can actually work really well. Again, I don't know the purpose of the standard vehicle now that this comes out. If this had 30 miles less range in the EPA cycle and was measurably bigger, okay, I could then see the product differentiation. But to have the same quoted range, very similar cargo capacity, same wheelbase, it's the same vehicle underneath. I'm really struggling to understand why both exist.
Let me kind of interject here. So I believe I quoted $136,000 starting price, but it's actually 132,000 695 versus 129,990. So the price difference is even closer than originally discussed. So yeah, it gets harder and harder to kind of see the IQ standard as the better option.
So what else do we know about this? What other specs can you share with us? So it's got the, same thing as normal Escalade, rear steer, big air suspension, 24 module battery pack, all that stuff.
So in terms of like actual, I guess, hardware and specs, it's almost identical to that of the current IQ, that 2025 model year. Um, and like Jordan mentioned, so this will have different set of wheels. With the executive package, it will have different set of speakers versus the IQ not longer version. But other than that,
Wait,
for the
so
most part,
sorry,
these
just
are
just to understand what you're saying. Are you saying this only comes with the big sound system and the standard one doesn't?
no. So they both do, but I believe this one has more speakers in the executive package.
But you can get that in the standard one as well.
Right.
So that's just executive pack, which seems to be the same for each model because the standard one comes with the speakers and the headrest in the back as well.
Which even further kind of solidifies that point that
Yeah,
yeah, this
so
IQ.
basically it just comes down to, if you want super cruise on the highway, big ass sound system, big ass battery, big ass wheels, big ass truck, that you just buy the L. Like, just go in. It's an extra 3 grand, looks better, no downsides, and you get a little bit more space. And honestly, if you're concerned about fitting in a parking space, that extra 4 inches is not going to make a difference at all. What's your take, Jordan? I'm loving this.
Yeah, this is just the Escalade to get. And I really liked the Vistic. I think for a lot of people that makes sense. Like that seemed almost like a EV9 competition. But the Escalade IQ is so much more money, like 60 grand more than no, 50 grand, sorry, more than the Vistic, for still a 3-row. But if you need that space, there's not much in this segment. Yes, Gravity has more efficient packaging and maybe is even gaining that metrics, that measuring system on how we, measure what fits where. Like this might actually fit functionally more than the Gravity. It is slightly more storage capacity, I think, but not much. Like it's very, very similar and hilarious how much bigger of a vehicle this is. I don't know if you have those measurements side by side, Isaiah, but I think it's kind of funny to see how close the Gravity is to a lot of measurements, but this just, I mean, even these photos, like this has 24-inch wheels with 35-inch tires, and it doesn't really look like it. It just it's playing tricks on your eyes because your eyes are just like, oh, it's just an SUV. But if you see this on the road next to like an EV9, I think it'd be hilarious to see how much bigger this is, especially Gravity.
Yeah, love it. I think Gravity's the smart person's choice. This is just the big baller choice. And look, at the end of the day, this thing's going to cost more or equivalent to a regular Escalade to road trip. It's so inefficient, and charging stations have gotten so expensive for road tripping. You're not saving any money if you're road tripping. If you charge at home, yes, there is some cost savings, but if you're dropping 150 grand for a nicely spec'd one of these, who cares? You're just going for it because it's big and bad and awesome. And look, I'm a fan. I really like everything objectively about this is stupid and silly, but I love it.
Yeah, and if you open your garage and you see this and like a CT5 Blackwing wagon, like two-car solution. I mean,
If they would make a Blackwing wagon, that would be amazing. I would buy that in a heartbeat because I've been eyeing the Blackwing sedans.
I was gonna say, can you just swap everything over to the wagon one?
Well, they just don't have a wagon CT5 in our market.
Uh,
All right, Isaiah, I think that kind of is our thoughts. Why don't you wrap us up here?
Yeah, well, this is pretty interesting as you've overlaid multiple times at this point. I mean, the IQL just seems like the better choice between the two. But again, you have other options out there like the Gravity. We're going to see the Ionic 9 start to roll out. You have the EV9. And, between these options, the IQ Escalade Cadillac starts to kind of fade away. But in terms of just the extremity of this and how stupid it is, it's like it's fun. This is what you want to see like driving down the road in Las Vegas.
yeah, seeing this will make my day better, and that says something because there's a lot of EVs out there that don't make my day any better seeing them on the road.
Yeah, this is the ultimate Uber black vehicle.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, well that's it
Awesome.
from our side. Isaiah, you can end the show.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. What option would you guys go for between the 3-row EV SUVs that we have? Would you go for the IQL? Maybe the IQ suits you a little better. Ionic 9, Gravity, lots to think about. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is the Out of Spec podcast, and we will see you guys in the next one.